I woke up with a wedding ring. After a love spell backfired. Crap, I muttered as blood dripped from my fingers. Of course he was distracting. So distractingly handsome, I'd sliced my finger while arranging roses. The bell above the shop door chimed and my heart flipped. Right on time. 10:15 a.m., just like every Thursday for the past 3 years. "Morning, Samuel," Elliot called, his voice warm like honey. "Something smells amazing in here." I looked up, meeting his hazel eyes for a brief moment before glancing away. "Just got a new shipment of jasmine in." Elliot approached the counter, running his fingers through his dark curls. I had memorized every detail of this weekly ritual. How his bookstore sweater always had a faint smile of paper and coffee. How his glasses slid down his nose when he leaned in to inspect the flowers. How his smile created a dimple on only his right cheek. "The usual?" I asked, already reaching for the parchment paper. Elliot nodded, watching as I wrapped a bundle of fresh eucalyptus and lavender, destined for the reading nook in his bookstore across the street. As I carefully arranged the stems, Elliot's fingers brushed against mine. Whether by accident or design, I couldn't tell. The brief touch sent electricity up my arm, and our eyes met for a heartbeat longer than usual. He smiled, a soft private smile that made my breath catch. "You know, these arrangements last longer than any others I've ever had," he said, voice dropping lower. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I just want to make sure they're perfect for you. For your store, I mean." Elliot leaned slightly closer. "I've always thought there was something magical about your flowers, Samuel." The moment hung between us, fragile and full of possibility. "You know," Elliot said, leaning against the counter, "I've been thinking about asking you something for a while now." My pulse quickened. 3 years of longing, of rehearsing conversations that never happened, of watching him date other men while I remained silent. Could this be the moment? "I'm having a small gathering for the bookstore's anniversary next Saturday. Would you be interested in doing the flowers?" My hope deflated like a punctured balloon. "Oh, sure, of course." "Great, I'll email you the details." Elliot paid, his fingers briefly touching mine as he handed over the cash. "See you around, Samuel." The bell chimed again as Elliot left, taking with him all the words I had never had the courage to say. After a few minutes, "Absolutely pathetic," I whispered to myself, slamming the cash register drawer shut. I flipped the sign to "Closed for lunch" and retreated to the back room of my Victorian-era shop. The building had been a flower shop since 1892, and I had poured my life savings into preserving its original charm when I'd purchased it 5 years ago. Slumping onto my workbench stool, my elbow knocked against the wall, dislodging a brick that had always seemed slightly loose. It fell with a dull thud, revealing a small cavity behind it. What the? I reached into the darkness, my fingers meeting something leather-bound and cold. I pulled out a dusty book, its cover adorned with intricate golden symbols. The pages crackled as I opened it, revealing the handwritten text in faded ink. Most of it was indecipherable, but certain passages stood out with clarity. "To bind a heart to yours," I read aloud, my fingers tracing the words. "A ritual to be performed under the eclipse of the moon." I laughed bitterly. Now I'm reading spell books. Rock bottom officially reached. I was about to shove the book back when my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Rare lunar eclipse visible tonight." Something electric tingled down my spine. Coincidence, surely. Yet as I flipped through more pages, the spell's instructions seemed so simple, so harmless. This is insane, I told myself even as I gathered the materials listed in the book. Later that night. I stood in my private garden behind the shop, surrounded by flowers. The lunar eclipse had begun, casting an eerie red glow over everything. The spellbook lay open on a small table, alongside a silver bowl containing rose petals from Elliot's favorite variety. "I can't believe I'm doing this," I muttered, feeling ridiculous yet desperate. 3 years of yearning had worn me down to this point. Willing to try anything, even magic. Following the book's instructions, I pricked my finger with a silver needle, watching as a drop of blood fell onto a single rose petal in the bowl. "Elliot James Harrington," I whispered, his name like a prayer on my lips. "I bind your heart to mine." The moment the words left my mouth, the wind picked up. The eclipse reached totality, and I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Then, just as suddenly, everything went still. I waited, but nothing happened. No magical lights, no supernatural signs. Just the normal sounds of the night and my own embarrassed breathing. Well, that was anticlimactic, I sighed. What did you expect, Samuel? Magic isn't real. I crawled into bed that night feeling like a fool, falling into a sleep plagued by strange dreams. glimpses of a life I didn't recognize. In the future, 10 years ahead, I woke with the worst headache of my life. Sunlight stabbed through my eyelids as I groaned, raising my hand to shield my face. That's when I saw it. A gleaming gold wedding band on my left ring finger. What the? I sat bolt upright, staring at the ring in horror. It hadn't been there last night. I was certain of it. As I stumbled to the bathroom, flashes of memories hit me like lightning strikes. Elliot on one knee in the bookstore, surrounded by roses. Our wedding day, exchanging vows in my garden. Lazy Sunday mornings, Elliot reading aloud while I sketched new flower arrangements. But these weren't my memories. They couldn't be. Yet they felt as real as the ring on my finger. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to make sense of what was happening. When I looked up at the mirror, I nearly screamed. For a moment there, I couldn't recognize my own reflection. My face looked older, subtle lines around my eyes that hadn't been there yesterday, my hair slightly longer. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my shock. I made my way downstairs, finding my shop exactly as I'd left it, yet somehow different. New arrangements I didn't remember creating. A delivery man waited outside with a package. "Morning, Mr. Winters Harrington. Signature required." I stared blankly at the hyphenated last name before shakily signing the electronic pad. "Hope your husband's feeling better," the delivery man said with genuine concern. My husband? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Yeah, Elliot, my mom bought his latest book. Tell him his fans are sending him good vibes, yeah?" Before I could respond, the world tilted sideways. My vision tunneled, and I felt myself falling through space and time. When reality solidified again, I found myself standing in a hospital room. Elliot lay there, hooked up to various tubes and wires. He looked at least 10 years older than the Elliot who had bought flowers yesterday. "Sam?" Elliot's voice was a weak rasp. "You're back. Did you get some rest like I asked?" I moved forward automatically, my body seeming to know what to do even as my mind reeled in confusion. I sat in the chair beside the bed, taking Elliot's hand. So cold, so thin. "I'm here," I said, the words coming naturally despite my inner turmoil. I leaned forward and pressed my lips gently to his forehead, inhaling the scent that was uniquely Elliot, that had always felt like home. His eyes fluttered closed at the contact, a small smile gracing his pale lips. "Remember our first date?" he whispered, his thumb weakly stroking my hand. "You brought me those blue forget-me-nots because you said they matched my sweater." A memory that wasn't mine surfaced. Elliot laughing in the rain, blue flowers clutched to his chest, his glasses spotted with raindrops as he pulled me in for our first kiss. How could I forget, I heard myself say, throat tight with emotion. Elliot's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I knew then, Samuel. I knew you were the one." "The doctors came by," Elliot continued. "Still no answers. Just more tests tomorrow." My eyes fell on a chart at the foot of the bed. The diagnosis section read, "Unknown condition, progressive systemic failure." "How long?" I began, not knowing how to ask. Elliot squeezed my hand weakly. "Don't. We promised no timelines, remember? Just moments." His eyes, though sunken, still held that same warmth I had always adored. "Tell me about the shop. Did the new lilies come in?" I found myself answering, details spilling from my lips about a shipment I had no memory of ordering. Yet somehow I knew exactly what to say, as if part of me had been living this life all along. As we talked, I felt something shifting in my chest. A profound ache that went beyond confusion or fear. Despite the impossible situation, despite Elliot's illness, there was something unmistakable in the way he looked at me. Pure, unwavering love. "I've loved you for 5 years, you know," Elliot whispered, his eyes drifting closed. "Best 5 years of my life." Before I could respond, the world began to fade again, as reality shifted. In a different present, 5 years ahead. "Samuel, are you even listening to me?" I blinked, finding myself seated at a kitchen table I didn't recognize. Across from me sat a handsome man with a scowl on his face. Marcus, my ex-boyfriend from years ago. "I said my mother expects us for dinner tomorrow. After that stunt you pulled at the wedding, you owe her some face." Marcus drummed his fingers impatiently on the table. My eyes darted to Marcus's left hand, where a wedding band identical to my own gleamed in the morning light. My eyes darted to Marcus's left hand, where a wedding band identical to my own gleamed in the morning light. "We're married?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Marcus's expression softened unexpectedly, and he reached across the table to take my hand. The gesture was so unlike him that I almost pulled away. "I know we've been arguing a lot lately," he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever remembered it being. "But we can get back to how we were that night in Venice, remember?" Another foreign memory flickered through my mind. Marcus and I on a gondola, the lights reflecting in the water as he slipped his arm around my waist and whispered something that made me laugh. The memory felt hollow somehow, beautiful but lacking a genuine warmth. "You were wearing that blue shirt I love," Marcus continued, "and you looked at me like I was the only person in the world." I felt myself leaning toward him, muscle memory from a life I hadn't lived, and our lips met briefly. The kiss was practiced, familiar, but held none of the electricity I'd felt with Elliot. Marcus pulled back with a satisfied smile. "There's my Samuel." For a brief moment I was confused as I felt warmth with this version of Marcus. But soon Marcus continued. "Look, I know neither of us expected to get back together, let alone elope after running into each other at that bar that night. But what's done is done. My family's thrilled we reconciled, so just play along." My head spun. This was wrong. All wrong. Marcus and I had broken up 4 years ago after a toxic relationship that had left me emotionally drained. "I need some air," I mumbled, rising from the table. "Don't forget, we have dinner with my boss tonight," Marcus called after me. "Wear the blue shirt I bought you. The one you're wearing makes you look washed out." I stumbled onto the street, recognizing my neighborhood but feeling like a stranger in it. I made my way to my flower shop, finding it exactly where it should be, though the window display looked neglected. As I fumbled for my keys, a reflection in the glass caught my eye. A man watching me from across the street. Tall, with striking silver-white hair despite appearing to be in his 30s, and eyes so pale blue they seemed almost colorless. When I turned to look directly at him, the man was gone. Inside the shop, I slumped against the counter, my mind racing. 2 different lives, 2 different husbands. One I'd secretly loved for years who was dying, and one I'd been glad to escape who was now somehow back in my life. The shop phone rang, startling me. "Petal and Thorn, this is Samuel," I answered automatically. "Ah, Mr. Winters. I believe you have something that belongs to me." The voice was smooth. "Who is this?" "The person who sold you a book. I think it's time we discuss the fine print of your purchase." My blood ran cold. The spell book. "Indeed. Meet me at Moonlight Curiosities in 1 hour. And Mr. Winters, don't be late. Time, as you're discovering, is rather complicated." Moonlight Curiosities wasn't a shop I remembered existing, yet I found it easily tucked between a laundromat and a closed-down cafe. The windows were frosted, revealing nothing of the interior. The bells jingled softly as I entered. The shop was cluttered with strange artifacts, ones I couldn't identify. "Right on time," came a voice from behind a beaded curtain. A figure emerged, neither young nor old. With features that seemed to shift subtly when I wasn't looking directly at them. "You may call me Sage." "What's happening to me?" I demanded. "What did that spell do?" Sage gestured to a small table in the corner. "Sit. Tea?" "I don't want tea! I want answers!" "The tea is part of the answers," Sage replied with a serene smile, pouring a steaming liquid that smelled of chamomile and something else. Something ancient. I reluctantly sat, taking a cautious sip. Immediately my mind cleared, the constant headache receding. "You performed a binding spell during a lunar eclipse," Sage said, stirring their own tea. "But you failed to specify the nature of the binding. Magic requires precision, Mr. Winters. I don't understand. You asked for Elliot's heart to be bound to yours, but you didn't specify how or when. So the magic improvised." Sage leaned forward. "It created a fracture in time, splitting your reality into the 2 most likely outcomes based on your desires and fears." "2 timelines," I whispered. "In one I'm married to Elliot, but he's dying. In the other I'm with Marcus and miserable." Sage nodded. "The spell is draining Elliot's life force in one timeline because that's the price of forcing love that wasn't freely given. In the other, you've avoided that fate by reuniting with someone you've already shared a connection with. however unpleasant. How do I fix this? How do I go back to my normal life? You don't, Sage said simply. The moment you cast the spell, your normal life ceased to exist. You've been unconsciously jumping between these two futures for weeks now. Both husbands believe they're living continuous lives with you, unaware of the supernatural situation. My hand shook as I set down my teacup. Weeks? But it's only been a day since I cast the spell. Time is not linear in your experience anymore, Sage explained. And I'm afraid there's a deadline. By the next lunar eclipse, exactly 1 month from when you cast the spell, you must permanently choose one timeline. If you don't, both futures will collapse and everyone involved will cease to exist. Choose? My voice broke. Choose between watching Elliot die or living unhappily with Marcus? Those appear to be your options. Sage's expression was unreadable. Unless you discover a third path. As if on cue, the shop door opened, admitting a gust of wind and the silver-haired man I had glimpsed earlier. He stood there silently, those pale eyes fixed on me with unsettling intensity. Ah, Sage said, sounding unsurprised. It seems the third path has found you. In the present, 3 weeks ahead. Over the next 3 weeks, I lived through a dizzying cycle of time jumps, never knowing which reality I would wake up in. In Elliot's timeline, I spent hours at the hospital, watching my husband grow weaker while doctors remained baffled. In Marcus's timeline, I endured a hollow marriage of convenience, my husband more concerned with appearances than connection. And in both timelines, the silver-haired stranger appeared with increasing frequency. His name was Ash, I learned after finally confronting him in Elliot's timeline. He claimed to be new to the neighborhood, but always seemed to know exactly where to find me. One evening at the hospital, I'd stepped out for air while Elliot slept. Ash appeared beside me, silently offering a cup of coffee. How do you know I take it black, I asked, accepting the warm cup gratefully. I know many things about you, Samuel, he replied, his voice like distant wind chimes. His fingers brushed mine as he handed over the cup. I felt a strange resonance, as if something inside me recognized something in him. We sat on a bench beneath a flowering cherry tree, petals occasionally drifting down around us. In the soft twilight, Ash's otherworldly beauty seemed even more pronounced. You look exhausted, he said, reaching up to brush a petal from my hair. His touch lingered, gentle and comforting. I don't know how much longer I can do this, I confessed, surprising myself with my honesty. Ash's pale eyes held mine. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Something in his gaze pulled me forward, and before I could question it, I leaned in. Our lips met in a place that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. Warmth spread through me, and for a moment, the hospital, Elliot, Marcus, everything faded away. When we parted, Ash looked as stunned as I felt. That was unexpected, I finished, though it hadn't felt wrong. Why are you following me? I demanded it later, cornering him outside the hospital. Because you called me, Ash replied. You summoned me, Samuel. Before I could question him further, I was pulled into the other timeline, finding myself mid-argument with Marcus. You're never present anymore, Marcus was shouting. It's like you're a completely different person every time I turn around. The accusation hit too close to the truth. I fled to my shop, only to find Ash waiting inside, examining a rare blue orchid. Beautiful, Ash said, not looking up. Created through careful cultivation, not meant to exist naturally, like us. What do you mean, like us? I asked, approaching cautiously. Ash turned to me, the orchid still cradled in his hands. In this timeline, his presence felt even more ethereal, as if he might disappear at any moment. Without thinking, I reached out to touch his face, needing to confirm he was real. You're the only constant between my worlds, I whispered. Ash leaned into my touch, his skin cool and warm all at once. Perhaps that's what we're meant to be to each other, an anchor in the storm. He set down the orchid and took my hands in his. We stood there, and I felt a connection forming. Something deeper than the manufactured love with Elliot or the hollow reunion with Marcus. I don't understand what's happening to me, I admitted. But when I'm with you, it feels right. Ash smiled, a beautiful, sad expression. Nothing about this situation should feel right, and yet, he pulled me closer, our foreheads touching. And yet it does. This kiss was different from our first, deeper, more certain. I felt as though I was touching something ancient and powerful. Something that knew me better than I knew myself. Ash finally met my gaze. You still don't understand what's happening, do you? What am I? Before I could respond, the world shifted again, and I found myself back at Moonlight Curiosities with Sage. You're running out of time, Sage informed me, consulting an hourglass that seemed to contain galaxies instead of sand. The eclipse is in 7 days, and you still haven't made your choice. I can't choose between them, I admitted. Neither feels right. And then there's Ash, who keeps appearing in both timelines, speaking in riddles. Sage's eyes glittered. Have you considered that Ash is the key to understanding your situation? Who is he? What is he? That's for you to discover, Sage replied cryptically. In the future, 10 years ahead. Back in Elliot's timeline, I sat beside his hospital bed, holding his hand. Elliot was sleeping, each breath a visible struggle. I'm so sorry, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. This is all my fault. It is, came Ash's voice from the doorway, but not in the way you think. I looked up, anger flashing through my grief. What do you want from me? To help you understand, Ash approached, placing a hand on Elliot's forehead. Immediately, Elliot's breathing eased, his face relaxing into peaceful sleep. How did you? I can ease his suffering temporarily, Ash said, but I can't stop what's happening. Only you can. Tell me how, I pleaded. Ash knelt beside my chair, taking my free hand between both of us. The compassion in his eyes made my heart ache. Do you truly love him? Ash asked softly. Not the idea of him, not the person you wished he could be, but this man, exactly as he is. I looked at Elliot's sleeping face, memories of our conversations over the years filtering through my mind. Both the real ones from my shop and these new, manufactured ones from our married life. I love parts of him, I admitted, but this, what we have here, it isn't real. It was forced. Ash's fingers intertwined with mine. And what of us? Is this real? The question hung between us, weighted with possibility. I turned to him, studying the impossible silver of his hair, the otherworldly blue of his eyes. I don't know what you are, I whispered, but whatever is between us feels more real than anything else in either of my lives. Ash's smile was radiant. He leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips that felt like a promise. Meet me at your shop at midnight, Ash instructed. Bring the spell book. A few hours later, that night I waited in my flower shop, the ancient spell book open on the counter. The door opened and Ash entered, his silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. My breath caught. There was something otherworldly about Ash's beauty. My breath caught. There was something otherworldly about Ash's beauty, something that called to me on a level I couldn't explain. Who are you really? I asked. What are you? Ash approached slowly, stopping just inches away. I am what you created, he said softly. I am the embodiment of the spell itself. I stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Is it? You performed a powerful binding spell during a rare astronomical event with no clear direction. The magic had to go somewhere, take some form. Ash reached out, his fingertips hovering just above my cheek. It chose this form. It chose consciousness. It chose to know you. You're saying you're the spell? That you've been, what, watching me? Learning about me? Loving you, Ash corrected, his pale eyes intense. The magic was meant to create love, Samuel, and it did. Just not in the way you intended. Something about his words resonated deep within me. I stepped closer, illuminating the space between us. The air hummed with energy. From the moment I took form, Ash continued, his voice barely above a whisper, I felt drawn to you. At first I thought it was simply the nature of the spell, that I was bound to you as its caster. But it's more than that. His hand finally made contact with my cheek, and I leaned into his touch. Unlike with Elliot or Marcus, there was no sense of obligation or history between us. Only a pure, uncomplicated connection. I've seen all sides of you, Samuel, Ash said. The longing, the kindness, the frustration, the hope. I've seen you care for a dying husband you never truly had and endure a relationship that brings you no joy. I've watched you put others before yourself, even when it hurts. And what did you see? I asked, my voice trembling. A soul worth loving for itself, not because of any magic, Ash replied simply. The air between us seemed to crackle with energy. This is impossible, I whispered, even as I found myself leaning towards Ash. Everything about this situation is impossible, Ash replied, yet here we are. Our lips met, and the world exploded into light. Magic surged between us, the flowers in the shop bursting into full bloom all at once. I felt as though I was touching pure energy, pure potential, something both ancient and brand new. When we finally broke apart, I was trembling. I've never felt anything like that. Neither have I, Ash admitted. I've existed for centuries as pure magic, moving through spellbooks and rituals, but never like this. Never with form, with feeling, with desire. As we spoke, I noticed something alarming. Ash was becoming slightly translucent, the edges of his form blurring. You're fading, I said, reaching out to touch his face. The magic is being consumed by the timelines, Ash explained. Every day that Elliot's life force drains, every moment you spend trapped in a false marriage with Marcus, it pulls energy from me. By the eclipse, I will cease to exist if you don't make a choice. What choice? I don't want either of those futures. Perhaps that's your answer, Ash suggested. Perhaps neither timeline feels right because neither is your true path. A realization dawned on me. The spell didn't show my future with Elliot or force me back to Marcus. It revealed you. Ash smiled sadly. A spell can't create love where none exists, Samuel. It can only reveal what's already possible. Your soul recognized something in the magic itself, something that eventually took my form. So what do I do? How do I fix this? You must perform the counterspell at the exact moment of the eclipse. You must make your choice, not between Elliot and Marcus, but about what love truly means to you. A few days later, the night of the eclipse arrived. I had gathered the courage to speak with both Elliot and Marcus, confessing everything about the spell and the fractured timelines. Elliot, despite his weakness, had listened with surprising understanding. I always felt there was something unnatural about how suddenly we came together, he admitted. Like I was being compelled to love you rather than choosing it freely. Marcus had been less receptive, accusing me of having a mental breakdown, but ultimately admitting our reunion had never felt right. We were toxic before, and we're toxic now, he'd said. Whatever's happening, I want out. Now, I stood in my garden once more, the spellbook open before me, Sage observing from a respectful distance. As the moon began to darken, Ash appeared, his form now so transparent that I could see the rose bushes through him. It's time, Sage announced. The counterspell requires sacrifice, Samuel. You must give up something precious to undo what's been done. I looked at the golden wedding bands I'd removed from both timelines, placed in the center. By performing the spell, Sage continued, you will collapse both timelines. Neither future will come to pass. Elliot will live, free from the curse, but he will not be yours. Marcus will pursue his own path, separate from you, and Ash, they hesitated. Ash will return to being pure magic, with no consciousness, no form, no memory of his time with you. My eyes filled with tears as I looked at Ash. There has to be another way. Magic requires balance, Sage said firmly. You cannot have everything you want without consequences. The eclipse reached totality, bathing the garden in eerie darkness. The moment had come. I picked up the silver needle, pricking my hand just as I had a month ago. I released these bonds forged in ignorance and desire, I recited, letting my blood drip onto the wedding bands. The rings began to glow with an unnatural light. Ash's form flickered like a candle in the wind. I sacrificed my claim on futures not meant to be, I continued, my voice breaking. The glowing intensified, the rings levitating slightly above the ground. Samuel, Ash whispered, now barely visible. Complete the spell. You must. I love you, I said, tears streaming freely. I didn't know it was possible to love something like you, but I do. Then let me go, Ash replied gently. That's what real love is. Knowing when to hold on, I reached out, my hand passing through his increasingly transparent form. In desperation, I tried once more to touch him. I don't want to forget you, I pleaded. You won't, Ash promised, his voice fading like a distant echo. With a shuddering breath, I completed the incantation. A shockwave of energy exploded outward from the rings, knocking me backwards. When I managed to sit up, the garden was empty save for Sage, who stood watching me with an unreadable expression. It is done, they said quietly. The timelines have collapsed. Reality has been restored to its natural course, with only you remembering what transpired. I looked around desperately. And Ash? The magic has returned to its natural state. Ash is gone. My sob echoed in the night air, a sound of pure loss. However, Sage continued, their voice softening, you have surprised me, Samuel Winters. Few would choose to break their own spell, to set everyone free rather than selfishly keeping any version of happiness. What does that matter now? I asked bitterly. It matters, Sage said, because magic responds to worthiness, and you have proven yours. Sage approached the still glowing wedding rings, passing their hands over them in a complex gesture. The gold began to melt, reshaping itself, until all that remained was a small pulsing ball of golden light. Magic cannot create love, Sage explained, but it can reward sacrifice. The consciousness that called itself Ash earned the right to exist through your actions. Sage cupped the light in their hands, blowing gently. The light expanded, taking shape, limbs, torso, features forming out of pure golden energy. When the transformation was complete, Ash stood before us, solid and real, though his hair remained silver white and his eyes that impossible pale blue. How? I whispered, afraid to believe. The spell is broken, Sage explained. The timelines are restored, but the magic itself has chosen to remain, in this form, bound not by your will, but by its own. Ash looked down at his hands in wonder. I'm human? As human as you wish to be, Sage replied. The magic has given you the choice it was denied before. I approached cautiously, reaching out to touch Ash's face. Warm, solid, real. Is this really happening? Ash smiled, taking my hand. Magic works in mysterious ways, especially when guided by love. In the present, after 6 months. 6 months later, I stood arranging a display of exotic blooms in the front window of Petal and Thorn. We need more of the moonflower essence for Mrs. Prescott's wedding bouquet, I called toward the back room. Already ahead of you, Ash replied, emerging with a crystal vial. The new magical botanicals section of the shop had been his idea. A way to bring a little enchantment into people's lives, safely and ethically. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Elliot entering, hand in hand with a handsome man I recognized as a regular customer from the bookstore. Samuel, Ash, Elliot greeted us warmly. I wanted you to meet David officially. We've been dating for 3 months now. I smiled genuinely. It's great to see you both. How's the bookstore? Thriving, Elliot replied. And I have news. My novel's being published next spring. As we chatted, I felt nothing but happiness for Elliot. Whatever spell-induced feelings had existed between us were gone, replaced by a comfortable friendship. The door chimed again, and Marcus walked in, looking tanned and relaxed. Just picking up those exotic seeds I ordered, he explained. My flight to Barcelona leaves tonight. The botanical garden there offered me a research position I couldn't refuse. After the timelines collapsed, everyone had found their own path. Marcus had rekindled his abandoned passion for botany, Elliot had finished the novel he'd been working on for years, and I had found something I never expected. A partner who understood me completely, who had literally been formed from the same magic that flowed through my beloved flowers. Later that evening, Ash and I stood in our garden, before a special rose bush we had planted together. Around our necks hung matching golden pendants, crafted from the melted wedding rings of timelines that no longer existed. Do you ever regret it? Ash asked, his arms wrapped around me from behind. Giving up those futures for this uncertain one? I turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who had once been pure magic. How could I regret choosing what's real over what was forced? Besides, I added with a smile, I think we've done pretty well with uncertainty. As the moon rose above us, the special rose bush burst into bloom.
its petals shimmering with an inner light that would last as long as our love remained true. I reached up to Ash's face, marveling at how something that began with such desperate longing had transformed into something so genuine. I tried to use magic to arrange my love life, I murmured. But it turns out, some things can't be changed. They can only be discovered.
Like us, Ash agreed, leaning down to kiss me as the magical roses glowed brighter in response to our joy. The end. Would you use a love spell on your crush without knowing the consequences? Thanks for watching! Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome!